Thanks for downloading this week's episode of Growing Guelph. This week I speak to Kathryn Stokes. Kathryn is the Director of Housing Partnerships with Habitat for Humanity, Guelph Wellington. I had a great conversation with Kathryn. I think you'll enjoy it. So look forward to that right now. Well, I'm here today joined by Kathryn Stokes, the Director of Housing Partnerships at Habitat for Humanity, Guelph Wellington. Kathryn, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Yes, thank you for having me, Jordan.
Kathryn, can you start by sharing a bit about Habitat for Humanity, Guelph Wellington, and its mission? I think a lot of people are familiar with the Habitat for Humanity overall brand, but they might not be aware of the role that affordable homeownership plays in building stronger communities.
Yeah, for sure. So I always like to say that I think everyone knows about Habitat, but they don't necessarily know what Habitat does because we're well known for a lot of different reasons. But our primary mission is that we partner with families through affordable housing so they can attain social and financial stability to transform their futures and our community, which essentially means that we partner with families through affordable homeownership so that they have more stability and affordable payments to allow them to move into independent homeownership.
That sounds great. Yeah, I think housing has just become such a hot button topic. And I'm sure that's been how it seems like it's just continuously pushed further away from everyday Canadians, everyday residents of Guelph. And then there's people who have been fortunate enough to become homeowners like long ago when it was more attainable. But yeah, I think having a community and an organization dedicated to lowering some of those barriers and making it possible is really cool. So in terms of current projects and initiatives, I understand that Habitat's currently developing a 32-unit townhome community in Fergus, and there's also availability in Guelph's City View Village is the name of the establishment. Can you tell us more about those projects and what they'll mean for local families?
Yeah, for sure. So, like you said, we're building 32 stacked townhomes in Fergus. This is our Guelph Village community, and it offers 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units to both Habitat families and market purchasers. And then one of the really cool components of Guelph is that we have a lot of accessible units for our 3 bedrooms. So this provides a space for those that have accessibility needs or are looking to age in place because they are completely ground level, allowing for kind of stability in housing as they grow up in that space. And then we are currently seeking applications for this community. We do have several families placed, but it's something that we're actively recruiting for. And then we did finish up our City View Village community in 2020, which is in Guelph, right off of York Road. And one of our partner families did move on from the program. So we do have a 1 bedroom available in that community. So for anyone that applies for our program, they would be considered for those vacancies.
Very cool. Well, I can get some of those links from you to make sure that if someone's listening and they want to stop the episode right now and check it out or send it to someone they know, the links will be available in the show information. Is there also a community on Speedvale in Guelph? And maybe share some of that with our listeners?
Yeah, so as you've likely seen, there is a planning sign up at 303 and 317 Speedvale Avenue East. So we had previously planned to do a 48-unit development there, but due to some affordability restrictions within the zoning approvals, we've had to kind of restructure our plan and go back to the drawing board to see how we could make it feasible for Habitat and update our plan. So our new plan is now being presented to the city of Guelph, and we should have more information on how that moves along in the coming weeks. And due to the change in scale, we've had to update our plan to, I can speak to the specifics, sorry. So originally we were looking at a 48-unit apartment style property. It was going to be 6 stories, and it would have provided a lot of options for families, but more options to the market just based off of how the configuration was planned out. So we went back to the drawing board and we looked at ways that we could provide more units to families, but also ensure that there are some market units. So we're now planning to do 30 stacked townhomes on the property. So it does fit with kind of the needs of those that are applying for a program. It does kind of fit better with what they're looking for. And it also, due to the change in scale, we also believe that we can finance the property through our community bonds program. So it will allow us to accept investment from the community so that our community can invest in affordable housing directly. And another component of this property is that we are looking at a solar energy component that is now being fundraised with the Guelph Rotary, and we have a lot of support from Mike Schreiner as well. So there's a lot of really positive things to come with this project, but we have had to kind of reevaluate what that looks like. But we're very excited now about the different potentials.
It sounds like navigating some of these projects requires a lot of maneuvering around local bylaws and what neighborhoods want and what the city wants. That must be such a, and then all the people who you want to move into these, and then set them up through the program. It sounds like an incredible amount of administrative work that goes behind the scenes.
Yes, there's definitely a lot of work going on behind the scenes in terms of kind of build planning, working with build staff as well, like planning staff, and then looking at kind of the needs of those that are applying to our program, because ultimately we want to build for those that are applying and make sure that it suits their needs. So we're always looking at ways to kind of improve our projects, and we're really excited to see how this takes place with Speedvale.
In terms of those needs and those requirements, for listeners who aren't familiar, can you kind of walk through how the Habitat's affordable homeownership program works and who's able to qualify and maybe what makes the program unique?
Yeah, for sure. So, when you think of kind of Habitat for Humanity, you likely think about how we used to build single detached homes or semi-detached homes, or we would buy a property and renovate it through volunteer support. And we've kind of had to change our scope just based off of how housing has changed, the amount of applications that we're now getting. We used to serve kind of one family a year, and now we're looking at kind of a bigger scope because we want to make a greater impact in the community. So, to help manage the increase in home prices and what the market looks like, we now offer a dual mortgage program. So the way that that works is that a family takes out a first mortgage at a rate that they can afford, so at 30% of their income, and they pay this on a monthly basis and build equity in the property. And then Habitat holds the second mortgage, a passive second mortgage at 0% interest. So we do have to sell all of our units at fair market value just based off of our charitable status. So the way that we're able to make this affordable for families is doing the dual mortgage model and ensuring that their payments are affordable based off of their income.
That's very cool. So this is I guess, a tangent question, but I'd be interested to understand how the different Habitat for Humanity organizations are, like, how they relate to each other. Like, are there opportunities that you get to, like attend like a larger meeting or something and sort of find out what are the other struggles that other Habitat for Humanities, like their unique situations, and because everywhere is going to be different, right? Like we're an hour outside of Toronto, so we're dealing with the
Mhm.
rise in the housing market because of that. But if someone, I imagine a habitat that services a community where housing values aren't skyrocketing are going to have very different challenges, and the challenges might be completely unique. But do you have any insight into?
So we work in kind of a federation model. So we have our national body, and then there's affiliates based off of different catchment areas and communities. And each homeowner services representative who's within our affiliate, that's myself, and then within the other affiliates, we meet on a monthly basis. So we do kind of have a touch point of being able to discuss how we can make our program better, what other affiliates are doing. So there is kind of that touch point, but recognizing that every kind of community is different in their needs and also in terms of what the market looks like there. So a lot of affiliates are moving to the model that I presented just based off of what housing looks like there. But that's not to say that every affiliate offers that. And one aspect within our program is that you must reside or be employed full time in the community that you're applying for. So I do get a lot of applications for those in kind of KW or in GTA. I think it's because they want to live in Guelph or just based off of the affordability factor if housing prices are different here. But I just want to remind people that you would have to apply for your specific community. And I can go into more of what our actual eligibility criteria looks like if you'd like.
Yeah, yeah. Let's hear that.
So the way that it works is we kind of look at three things when we're looking at applications. We look at the need of the family. So they do have to be living in unsafe, unsuitable, or unaffordable conditions, or not have the ability to get a mortgage on their own that would pay for the full purchase price of a property. We also look at the ability to pay. So they must have the ability to qualify and pay for a mortgage of up to 30% of their income, and then having a willingness to partner through volunteerism and being an ambassador to share Habitat's mission within the community. And then there is some other aspects as well, but those are kind of the general guidelines that we look at within applications.
Sounds all quite reasonable. I think you just kind of touched upon this in that answer, but can you explore what I understand is one of the key aspects of Habitat's model is that idea of partnership with future homeowners. Can you explain what that actually means in practice?
Yeah, for sure. So the partnership aspect is in a lot of ways. The first, and I think the clearest point is the financial support. So the family's taking out that first mortgage. We are holding that second mortgage. So we're partnering and both have a stake in the property. There's also the partnership through volunteer hours. Because we're providing this opportunity to families, they do have to do up to 500 volunteer hours, either in the restore, on the build site, or with another community organization. Our hope with the volunteer hours is that it helps the community as a whole. And so if we can't find an opportunity in-house, we'll allow them to volunteer elsewhere. They also will complete homeowner education. So our ultimate goal is that families move into independent homeownership at the end of the partnership term. So we want to provide them with the resources to fully understand homeownership and be able to be successful in this program. And another aspect of the partnership is we provide ongoing support. So if they have any questions throughout the process, if anything comes up in their lives and they want to reassess their situation or just have a conversation with Habitat, we're here to help. And so the partnership is just kind of whatever that specific family needs. We are open to kind of working with them and trying to ensure that they are successful in the program.
Sounds like a lot of effort is put to put the humanity and the Habitat for Humanity element of that, like really working with people's unique situations and needs and not just, being like a great big bureaucratic machine that people have to work through. So that's good to hear because every situation and every family is going to have every situation is unique. Every family has their own set of circumstances, right?
Yeah, and we do recognize that this is also something that I think most people aspire to be a homeowner, but they may not understand what homeownership looks like. So our application process is pretty extensive to ensure that they understand what they're committing to. But it's also, we recognize that if before the end of the 20-year partnership term, they want to end the partnership, that is something that we can discuss with them. So in the event that a family wanted to go back and be a renter, just because homeownership is too much responsibility, we are happy to work with them to kind of see the next steps because we understand that this is kind of it's a huge opportunity and it's not for everyone. And we have the different housing options within the housing continuum for a reason. And by providing our option, we are allowing for space within kind of other markets for people, but people may decide that they want to move to a different section.
Hmm. In terms of that, like impact on the community, it's, everyone's kind of very much aware that Guelph and Wellington County are facing a growing need for affordable housing. From your perspective, what are some of the biggest challenges and how can the community support the solutions?
That's such a hard question, I have to say, but I have a couple. I would say for us, a lot of it is financing constraints. We can't do these projects on our own. Like Garifraxa alone is a $14 million project. And so we have to look at different ways of funding the project, if that's any government loans or grants, as well as our community bonds program where people are investing, and then also taking out financing from kind of a financial institution. So that can be a difficult one, just to kind of take it from start to finish, as well as market changes. As I'm sure everyone is aware, the housing market is constantly changing. And so it's hard for us to assess what our homes will sell for. So
Mhm.
we're constantly having to kind of shift uh, what we're expecting in terms of what we need families to get in terms of financing to ensure that we can make the project work. And then also understanding if we can find placements for our units as well. And I think I did kind of speak to this previously, but there's prolonged timelines for projects. When we are working on a community, we have to acquire the land and then we have to go through the planning process with the municipality and then actually do the construction. So sometimes there are delays, like in any construction project. And so we kind of have to pivot based off of what is changing. And so it's just a lot of changing pieces where we have to ensure that everything fits into the puzzle and that everything works. I think for ways that people can support us, I think it's important to support organizations in our community that are doing stuff for the betterment of the community as a whole, and supporting organizations that provide affordable housing through the donation of funds, donation of time through volunteering, and investment opportunities, and also just being an advocate for the items that you're passionate about. We see the need for housing on probably at all different levels within the community. And so being an advocate when projects come forward for affordable housing options and looking at ways that will help the community as a whole.
That's good advice. And I think some of the maybe I can say it if you won't, but some of the being an advocate means like don't be a what's the term? Is it NIMBY? Not in my backyard. I've seen this like with friends and like everyone doesn't like no one wants to be a and for listeners who aren't aware of the concept of a NIMBY, not in my backyard. It's someone who um they seemingly do support some like causes for social justice, like things that can be like can help a community move forward, but not if those things are next to them or impact like on their street. Like basically just the idea like, oh, people are for homeless shelters, but a homeless shelter down the street from them, that sounds problematic and they don't want that. And everyone feels that way. And it, yeah, I can understand that that's a very tricky thing. People are resistant to change, and a lot of people, especially if they bought their houses in the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s, and they say like, "Well, we were able to do it with hard work and dedication. Why aren't these families able to do it without like why do these systems need to exist?" But I won't go into that too much. I think the justification for the existence of charities, just listen to any other episode of this podcast and you'll get there. But
Yeah, I would say from my perspective, especially in the work that I do day to day, a lot of my work is dispelling kind of misconceptions of habitat.
mm,
I would say a lot of people look at a habitat build and they may assume that we utilize a lot of volunteer work. So the quality of our builds may come into question,
mm,
as well as who are we supporting. And so I just want to also reiterate that about 95% of our kind of build efforts are done by subcontractors. And we are held to the same standard as any builder. We have the HCRA licensing as well as Terry on warranty. And the families that move into our units are probably people that you know and work with. They just may not be able to get into home ownership on their own. And so I think when people hear more about what Habitat actually does, I think it's a little eye-opening about those that actually need support, especially in the market that we're in and in the housing crisis. And so I know when we use the term, when I know the Poverty Task Force has been working on kind of a campaign of Yes in My Backyard to
mm.
kind of dispel the NIMBY perspective. So I think in all aspects that's a positive thing for all of our affordable housing projects.
That's great. I like that idea. We'll get YIMBY going as a positive term of endearment, and not a pejorative like NIMBY is. I wonder where some of those false misconceptions that people have, or just misconceptions about Habitat for Humanity, like, well, there was the recent passing of former U.S. President Jimmy Carter, who probably one of the most famous advocates of Habitat for Humanity in general, and I wonder if that's what causes some of that. Like people just have these notions of like, oh yeah, I've seen video footage of elderly Jimmy Carter like hammering things together on a job site, and they sort of just extrapolate that into like, oh, they're not real houses, they're like volunteers trying to bring houses together, or people who don't know what they're doing and things like that. So sorry to hear that so much of your time is spent dispelling those sort of misconceptions, but yeah. Are there any other like common ones that come to mind that you want to address here?
So one aspect that I did mention is that we do have to sell homes at fair market value. So I
Mm,
think one of the questions that I get a lot is, if I do the volunteer hours, do I get a free home? And so that is untrue. You do have to pay fair market value, but the way that we make it affordable is that dual mortgage model. And I understand, I think, because Habitat is a North American charity, there's a lot of different kind of renditions of what they do within each affiliate. So, like I
right.
said, every affiliate is very different. And so, based off of what you understand of Habitat from another affiliate, may not be the true case for a specific community. So that's definitely one of the questions that I get a lot, is just the volunteer aspect, allowing you to get into our program, whereas you have to be fully approved to start the volunteer hours. I think the other aspect is kind of the income aspect. Traditionally, Habitat was for kind of low income families. And now that we've had to shift our program just based off of what the market looks like now, we do support the missing middle. If you look at the provincial policy statement, we're supporting families within the 30% to 60% threshold, which equates to about 64,000 to 113,000 household income. And that's not to say that we wouldn't support those at a bit above or a bit below. We kind of do a pooled application system to ensure that we're supporting people at all levels. But when you understand kind of our income threshold and our other criteria, I think you begin to understand those that we're supporting. It's people that you know within the community that just cannot get into home ownership on their own. And our hope is that by moving them into affordable home ownership, it opens up spaces in market rentals and subsidized rentals so that there's space for other individuals to move through. So that's more kind of the misconceptions that I have to correct.
Hmm. And you've spoken to some of this, like with the volunteer obligations and the partnership that you have with people participating in the program. I understand that like all of this fosters a sense of community. Are you able to share any stories of families whose lives have been changed through this program, whether like getting into the specifics of them or not? But
So, for privacy reasons, I cannot share a specific story, but
mhm.
I did a survey a couple of years ago with people who had been in the program between about 5 to 15 years. And they all kind of gave me feedback about how living in a Habitat home had impacted their lives. And some of the responses we got were just about kind of how it's made life affordable, how it's provided home security. It has increased their self-esteem. It's given them the ability to plan for their future and offered a new beginning just because it was a new opportunity that they didn't have previously, kind of giving them a sense of being a community member because now they're rooted in that community. And it also gave their family a stable place to call home. One of the greatest impacts that I see is kind of the stability for children and how that allows them to kind of grow and probably have more success moving through their life because they now have this stability in housing. And one of our hopes with our program is that it provides that stable and affordable housing, and then it impacts kind of their quality of life, their children's futures, and the community as a whole. And based off of the feedback that we're seeing, that's kind of the impact that we see it's making.
That's great. It just seems so obvious, like, and not so obvious that it doesn't need to be like spelled out, but just having that stability where you'll know where you'll be 6 months from then, a year from then, and the roots that you're able to put down. I'm sure, like myself, many listeners grew up in situations that they take for granted, like parents that owned houses, and it was just sort of a notion that we all had that, like, yeah, you reach a certain point, you become an adult, you get a stable career, and then home ownership is just one of the many doors that opens up for you when you've succeeded in that way. And of course, things aren't working that way. Like people do everything right. They, like you said, with those income thresholds, like they probably feel like they're working jobs that like they've had to take education for, they've had to work hard for, they're dedicated to. They're maybe two spouses working together, and yet they're still like home ownership is still just continuously moving away from them for a whole bunch of reasons. So that's that I think, like you said, what did you call it? The was it the missing middle?
Yes, yes.
Hmm. Well, for anyone who's listening who wants to help, whether through volunteering, donating, or even if they think they'd make a good applicant for one of these homes, how can they get involved with Habitat for Humanity, Guelph Wellington?
There are a lot of ways to get involved. So I guess the kind of most forward front facing aspect is our restore. So you can come volunteer at our restore. You can also donate goods there. I know for myself, I found a lot of great items for my house. So it's a great way to support your community while also finding some fun stuff for your house. You can also donate your time in other ways. We also have opportunities on our build site in our administrative office. Like I said, we do offer a community bonds program. So essentially, you would invest a certain amount of funds. There is a specific amount of return similar to a GIC, and it directly invests in affordable housing in the community. We offer corporate build days. So if you have a group of friends or if your team at work wants to come volunteer on the build site, there is a specific fee for that, but it's a way to support affordable housing and have a fun team building day. And the other way is just kind of advocating for what we're doing, letting people know what the Habitat program is. Like I said, these are people that you likely know either in your network and your community at work. It's just ensuring that they understand that this support is available. So I encourage everyone that's listening, if you think that this program fits your needs or someone that you know, please let them know about the program because that's our hope is that we can provide these affordable homeownership solutions to individuals in need. They just need to know that it's available.
That's great. I suppose I'm doing one of those, so the advocacy work right now in my own way.
Yes.
And you mentioned this, and it's Surprising it's taken this long to come up in conversation, but I love the Habitat for Humanity restore. Since becoming a homeowner myself, like 4.5 years ago, the restore is like, I'd say, I was gonna say, like, is it the most, like, the best resource? It's like tied between the restore, the Guelph Tool Library, and then just the existence of like Home Depot. But I'm not as eager to like say like, yeah, Home Depot, everyone knows that, but the restore, whether I'm looking for something in particular or just going there and like getting inspired by a new tool set or something to tackle. I love the Guelph restore. I love all, like, I my wife and I will sometimes do like little days where we tour around to different restores, like to kill a Saturday. And yeah, I've never regretted a trip to the restore, even if I walk away with nothing. It's always so much fun.
Yeah, it's definitely a great resource. And I think one thing I missed is that you can donate items to the restore.
Mm.
And the nice thing about our restore is that it takes in donations and it kind of diverts stuff from the landfill. So if it's items, especially like lighting and stuff like that, if we need to fix it up a bit, we can do so. And it's a way for us to help kind of reduce waste and allow people to have affordable items to buy for their home. It's a lot of kind of furniture as well as construction goods and stuff like that. So I highly encourage that you come take a look because
Mhm.
there's new stuff every day. So if you see something you like, you do have to get it that day.
Yes, it encourages frequent shopping, and it also means that like if you need something that like I can't think of an exact example, like a light fixture that you're trying to replace something specific of it, but you've browsed like it's an older light fixture and it seems nice, and then you look at some of the newer options, especially that
Mhm.
are affordable options, and it I don't know, nothing beats just getting something that's old but like tested and true, and it's made of solid metal and it's going to exist for another 50 years in the future, so why not put it to good work at your house instead of just being in a landfill.
Yeah,
um
for sure.
so that's all I'll say is we've heard a lot of good stuff about all the programs, but yeah, the restore in particular, I guess it's the element of habitat that I interact with the most day to day, so it means the most to me, even if it's not the most impactful in terms of, well, it all ladders up, right, to the same organization. Well, awesome. Thanks. So, is there anything else that you wanted to mention to our listeners in terms of things to know about upcoming? Oh, I guess something to ask is you had talked about, is there a deadline for people who are thinking of applying that they should be aware of?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So for Garifaxa, we're looking at estimated occupancy at the at the end of this year. Sorry. So what I would say is I encourage you to apply as soon as possible, especially if you want to live in Center Wellington and Fergus. And then for our City View unit, we are looking to occupy that unit this year. So I would encourage you to apply as soon as possible because we are doing a lot of kind of community engagement efforts and awareness efforts. And so we hope and we kind of foresee that we're going to get a lot of applications in the coming months. And so it's kind of on a first come, first serve basis. So we do encourage people to apply. The only other thing I would add is if you've listened to this and you know of a group that you would like us to present at, I'm actively doing presentations at workplaces, at community organizations, or if you just have a group of friends that wants to learn more about our program, we are offering information sessions about our homeownership program in hopes that we can spread the word about this opportunity and find those that could apply.
Very cool. I've seen a little bit about, like, I'm guessing, I saw recently that the Restore was the host of the Guelph, was it the Guelph Film Festival or the Guelph, there was something. Am I
Yeah,
correct?
we did like a film festival night with one movie playing there. We have a
Yeah,
lot of different events that we partner with
right.
organizations to do at the Restore. So I would encourage you to take a look at kind of what comes up over this year in terms of our events there, because we always have new things happening.
I just remember when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's such a fun usage of a space that's already a great big open space full of couches. And now it's like, oh, yeah, just point them all in the same direction. And now you can host an event there. But yeah, that's very
Yeah.
cool.
Another thing that we are offering that's for a limited time is that we're doing a Women's Day build for International Women's Day. I know I think it's March 17th. But if you are interested in doing a Women's Day build, please get in contact with us because it's going to be a really fun day. So it'll be kind of a normal build day where you go on our Garifaxa build site and get to work with a strong team of women and learn more about what construction looks like.
Very cool. Well, there's so many ways to support and so many good things you're doing. So thanks so much for taking some of the time out of your busy day to talk to me and to our listeners. It's really appreciated.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Growing Guelph. I've been your host, Jordan Sloggett. Be sure to subscribe to us on social media, on your favorite podcast app, and if you have a recommendation for a future guest you'd like me to speak to, you can reach out to me at growingguelph@gmail.com.